We now continue with Smurf.
This story goes way back. I'm talking like 7 years plus. I can't tell you the exact year off the top of my head, but let's just say 2012, although it might have been 2014, but that's my best guess. I was in my mid-20s with a stable job and a girlfriend who is now my fiancée. I never went to college, so I had been in the workforce for a while, and it was unlikely that my life would experience any drastic change because of that. There was no reason for me to move far away from home, so I didn't. At that age, my girlfriend and I had just moved into my childhood home that my parents so graciously passed on to me as my first house. It's an extremely old brick house that my dad had actually inherited from his parents when he was around 40, so I would be keeping it in the family. The house itself has actually seen a few rounds of renovations, but you can still tell it's old. It's the brick that gives it away. There are very few brick houses in our area, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. I kind of like that though, it feels special. Speaking of our area, we also live in a very woodsy neighborhood, so the houses are spaced pretty far apart. Our house is also the last lot on our street, so instead of bordering the woods on just one side, we border it on two. The woods back there is massive, and I mean massive. As a kid, my brothers and I would often go exploring in there, but no amount of aimless wandering ever got us even close to charting the whole thing. I'm sure some people would find that intimidating, but I've always enjoyed the wilderness, so it was not a big deal to me. Plus, I'm a guy who likes keeping to myself, always have, so being isolated in my own little corner of the earth was appealing. Anyway, my girlfriend and I had been living there for a few months when all this started happening. It was sometime in the winter. I can't remember the exact month. All I know is that there was snow on the ground. It was sometime after 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, the one day a week I got to sleep in. As I was getting in my pickup truck to treat myself to a coffee like I do every Sunday morning, I noticed something odd in the driveway right next to my car. There was what looked like a trail of footprints in the snow. My first thought was that my girlfriend had somehow woken up before me without me hearing her, and she came out to the driveway for whatever reason. But the more I looked around, the more I realized that was impossible. The path led across my front yard and through the hole in our side yard fence, meaning the footprints had originated from somewhere in the woods. On top of that, the trail did not lead anywhere near our house, meaning they could not have been created by my girlfriend. I remember standing there confused as hell. The trail did not lead around our house or up to any of the windows, just by the driver's side door of my car. That meant someone had walked directly from the woods to my car, only to immediately turn around and walk straight back into the woods. It was bizarre. I ended up asking my girlfriend about it later that day, but she obviously was not responsible for it. I wish I could give you more details about that first instance, but it was so long ago, that's about as much as I remember. It must have been at least 2 winters after that when the next thing happened. I specifically remember it being around 2015, I think. I woke up that morning and walked to my car. As soon as I stepped outside, I instantly knew something was very, very wrong. There were footprints everywhere. I'm talking in the driveway, near all the windows, around the perimeter of the house. The yard was completely covered in them. I'm a pretty level-headed guy, so I'm not going to say I started panicking, but I would be lying if I said I was completely calm in that moment. I was already late for work, so I did not have time to inspect the prints very, very closely, but I did not want to leave my girlfriend in a potentially dangerous situation. I quickly ran around the house and yard to make sure no one was looking on the property, but that was about all I could do in the limited time that I had. As I was pulling out of the driveway, I texted my girlfriend about the situation so she would not freak out. I ended up leaving work early that day, mostly because the situation was stuck on my mind. By the time I got home, my girlfriend had made some shocking discoveries. As soon as I pulled up, she beckoned me into the yard and pointed at one of the trails, saying it had been bothering her all day. At first I was confused, but then I realized what she was talking about. None of the footprints had left any shoe marks. I felt like an idiot for not picking up on it sooner. Whoever had left the footprints had been walking around in their bare feet. I was at a loss for words. Who the hell would walk around barefoot in freezing cold temperatures? My girlfriend suggested that maybe it was some kind of animal, but the prints genuinely looked like 2 human feet. We went inside and called my dad, but he said he never experienced anything like that in all of his years living in the house. He told me to grab my rifle and try tracking down whoever had left the footprints. I really did not want to, but I knew this kind of thing was my responsibility. My girlfriend wanted to call the police, but I knew that would be a waste of time. We had no evidence that a crime was committed, and I did not think that trespassing would warrant a search. I told her I would call the police if I found something in the woods, and she agreed. Like I said before, that woods is its own world, so I told myself I would turn back as soon as the sun started going down. I slung my rifle over my shoulder and headed out. I must have been following the trail for like 30 minutes when I noticed something really strange. Seemingly out of nowhere, the trail split into 2 diverging paths. I did not know which one to follow. Hell, I didn't even know that was possible out here. I thought maybe whoever had left the trail had doubled back to confuse me, but then a scarier thought hit me. Was there more than one person out there? I was under the impression that I had been tracking one person this whole time. The possibility of multiple people had never even occurred to me. That was enough to shake me up, though I was not fully comfortable knowing I could be outnumbered out there. I stood there a little while longer before deciding to turn around. It was getting dark anyway. As I was walking back, I could not help but think about those footprints. I felt like I would have noticed if 2 people were trying to walk in the same footprints. There is no way the person in the back could have done it without messing up at least once. Then I thought that maybe someone had walked backwards from deeper in the woods to make it look like there had been 2 people there the whole time. And then, obviously, there was the possibility that it was just one person who doubled back on himself. Maybe someone had been carrying another person on his back and just got tired. I really didn't know what explanation was the most disturbing. We did end up calling the police that night, but as I predicted, they told us that there was not much that they could do without definitive evidence of a crime. I told my girlfriend that I was going into the woods again the next morning, but it snowed pretty heavily that night, so there were no prints to follow anymore. My girlfriend was obviously terrified, but there was literally nothing we could do. Luckily, that was the last thing that happened that winter. In fact, nothing happened for a few years after that. I will go as far as to say that we had forgotten about the whole thing. A lot had happened since then. My girlfriend and I got engaged in that time frame, and we were focusing on other things. I would not be writing this story if it ended there though. What I'm about to tell you happened less than a year ago. It was just after the new year, so January of this year. One random morning, I woke up to footprints all over my property. Just like that, all of the memories came flooding back. My fiancée actually broke down in our bedroom, asking me if we would ever escape this nightmare. I didn't know what to tell her. It was actually worse this time. There were footprints leading to my shed, and a bunch of my tools were missing. God knows what else those people had done. I was furious. I called up my friend T and explained the situation, and asked him if he would help me. He is a big wilderness guy and a much more experienced hunter than I am, which is part of the reason I asked him for help. He agreed and drove over to my place a few hours later. My fiancée was worried sick, but I promised her that T and I would be able to handle ourselves. We dressed for the cold and geared up, knowing we might be out there for hours. The reason I was not worried about the darkness this time around was because T had this really expensive thermal scope for his AR-10, which would allow us to see in low visibility. I never spent that much money on hunting equipment, so I would still be blind, but it was definitely comforting knowing at least one of us would be able to see. I won't sugarcoat it. I was pretty scared by the time we had it out. At first, T and I talked as we walked, but after 45 minutes, we were mostly silent. It's like the seriousness of the situation hit us both at the same time. I remember praying to God that I had not dragged T into some horrible situation. I'm not sure how long we walked for after that, but eventually, the tracks once again split into 2 sets of footprints. We followed the one on the left for a few minutes, but at one point, the trail just stopped abruptly. We retraced our steps back to the split, and T made a comment about how whoever left the tracks really did not want to be followed. I didn't want to think about it, so we just kept following the footprints in silence. I am not kidding you. There were at least 3 other dead ends that forced us to retrace our steps, wasting valuable daylight. I remember thinking how remarkable it was that someone could walk backwards so perfectly that a trail of footprints did not look like it had been stepped on multiple times. I'm telling you, it was not normal. The one upside, which T pointed out to me, was that the dead ends likely meant that we were tracking just one person. Eventually, it started getting dark. We were really deep in the woods at that point. I did not recognize my surroundings at all. The trail footprints did not diverge for a long time after that. T said that whoever we were tracking had probably given up trying to make dead ends. Another 5 minutes or so passed, and the footprints started getting noticeably deeper. We were getting closer. At one point, another set of footprints appeared right alongside the original. T cursed and whispered that he had been wrong and that we were probably tracking 2 people. The sun was basically all the way down now, so T was checking his scope every so often. The snow gave me some visibility, but I will be honest, I probably would have turned around had it not been for T's scope. We were walking in complete silence. Out of nowhere, I felt T's arm reach against my chest, motioning me to stop. I looked at him, and he was looking straight ahead through a scope. I could not see what he was looking at, so I just kept looking at him. It looked like he was holding his breath. I had never seen him so still. After a good 20 seconds, he slowly made his way over to the nearest tree and crouched down. I followed suit, not even questioning why. He looked through his scope again, and I could see his hand begin to tremble slightly. Another 20 seconds of complete silence. I was dying of suspense, so I lightly tapped his shoulder. He loaded his rifle and silently handed it to me. I looked through the scope, and I had to cover my own mouth to fight back letting out a scream. There were 4 figures huddled in the snow. At first, I thought they were just bears, but I quickly realized that they were not. They were human beings. 2 of them were large and hunched over, and the other 2 were smaller. The smaller ones were clinging to a nearby tree, wildly jerking their heads around. They were eating something. I don't know what they were eating. I could not make it out. I could not make out faces or details. Thermal scopes do not give you that, but I could see enough to know that they were naked. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen with my own 2 eyes. Eventually, the larger ones picked up the smaller ones from off the tray and placed them on their shoulders. They then began walking deeper into the woods. I sat underneath that tree for what felt like an hour. We did not dare move until we were positive that there was no way that those things could hear us. By the time that we got back to the house, hours later, I was surprised to find my fiancée was still awake. She told me that she could not sleep knowing I was out there and asked me what we found. I told her in as minimal detail as possible, but she was still horrified. We called the police that night, who told us they would search the woods the first thing the next morning. T agreed to stay the night, so the 2 of us could assist the police in their search. The next morning, the police searched the woods with our help, but called it off after a few hours due to the partly covered up footprints. My fiancé demanded that they keep searching, but they said they could not sanction a huge search over some missing tools. I do not blame them, but it did not feel like closure. T and I knew exactly what we saw. I have a story of something that happened to me a few years ago. In my culture, witchcraft and the supernatural in general are just a part of life. I was born and raised in the States mostly, but I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and my roots there run deep. My family especially is blessed with sensitivity and magic, as we have multiple curanderas, which are healers, and some brujas, which are witches. My mother especially has been able to sense ghosts and otherworldly beings since she was a kid, and I have personally witnessed some pretty strange things growing up thanks to her. My dad was raised atheist and would make fun of my mom when they first met, but suffice it to say, ever since I've known him, he's been a full-blown believer. Anyway, This story happened right out of high school over the course of a few weeks, and is relatively tame compared to some of the crazier stuff I've seen, but it's the weirdest. This happened to me 15 years ago. I had just graduated from high school and decided to take a year off and figure out what to do next. My parents have property in Mexico City. It's 4 houses spread out across about 6 acres. There are lakes, creeks, thick vegetation, and forest and cave systems that litter the territory. The surrounding land is all thick forest, with scattered homestead here and there. It used to be a farm, but now it's used mostly for hunting trips into the bush. I decide I will look after the place for the next year and just relax. The caretaker warns me not to go into the northern expanse at night. He tells me not to spend the night in the northernmost property. Why's that? Coyotes? Boars? No, mijo. They've been finding dead animals all over the Northern Territory for the last few years. Puma? I don't know, but they've been taking the eyes, the hearts, and the tongues. Probably a bruja. I scoff at him and assure him that I will be careful. I say farewell and head toward the westernmost territory. 4 hours later, I arrive at a modest, mini Victorian-era house. I get settled and start cleaning. The caretaker lives in the southernmost house on the property. The nearest neighbor is 20 miles away. The nearest town is 30 miles away. After a few days of exploration, I spot a herd of boars heading north. I jet home to grab my rifle and start tracking. After around 3 hours I run out of water, so I backtrack to a small creek to grab some more. When I survey the area to make sure that there are no coyotes or pumas drinking, I spot something moving about 200 meters due north. I zero in with my scope and it's a dead coyote. I decide to investigate. When I get there, I literally gasp and get lightheaded. There are about 15 dead coyotes, from pup to adult, still warm, spread all around. From the looks of it, they have been dead for about 1 or 2 hours maximum. There are shoddy but similar cuts from sternum to groin. There are no livers. The heart and the tongues are all cut out. I hear someone taking a breath, so I drop my knife and raise my rifle in the general direction about 20 feet to my left. I remember what the caretaker said about the northern expanse. I sense that someone is there, but I cannot be too sure as the forest is too thick. After a few minutes of nothing but my own breathing, I slowly kneel down to pick up my knife and start backing up. After crossing the stream, I lower my rifle and keep my back to the sun as I turn and book it. As I'm leaving, I hear a grunting, almost cooing sound. I put my hand on my knife and take a look at my watch. It's 5:41 p.m. I think, oh shit, as the sun sets in about an hour, and I am at least 3 hours away from home. I decide to crash in the northernmost house as it's only about 30 minutes away. When I arrive, the house is in decent condition. I grab some cacti as it repels a bruja from entering a room. I bless some of my water in some old cups and place them at the entrances of the house. I spread some salt in the room I am staying in and draw a moon on it. As the sun sets, I gaze out the window, watching for movement. I fall asleep after a few hours. I wake up to the sound of the same grunting, but this time I hear dragging sounds. There are rocks being thrown at the house. I yell out, "I did not come to disturb you. I don't care what you're doing out here." I hear laughing and maybe dancing. After a while, the laughing fades off into the distance, and it gets quiet again. When morning breaks, I start making my way off to the southernmost house to talk to the caretaker. I confirm that there is a witch taking animal parts, probably a young one, just judging from her laugh and the amateurish cuts on the animal. I tell him to avoid the northern forest and territory, and she will move on eventually. I decide to move, lock up the northern and western houses, and move into the easternmost house, as it is closer to the caretaker and farther away from the northern forest. Everything is all good for the next couple of weeks. I got some hunting in and explored some really cool caves and clearings. When I was visiting some family in town, they were talking about the northern forest and the witch. I tell them I had a run-in with it. They tell me that there's been an increase in witches for some reason, as the surrounding towns have all been having their issues. Auntie says they leave the people alone, but that they've been feeding on fear. My cousin says he saw one driving down the highway the other day. My grandma gives me a rosary and some other supplies to bless my house. I head back home in the evening. As I'm pulling up to the house, I sense something again. I put my hand on my knife and stare at the general direction of the feeling. With my other hand, I mutter a few prayers. After a while, the feeling fades, so I turn and head inside. For the next few days, I find little gifts scattered around the house. I'm talking rat tongues, idols covered in blood, and carvings of what I can only assume would be me. So I respond by placing salt on the entrances, carving little moons on pieces of wood, and scattering them around the property, and planting some aloe vera sprouts around the house. After a while, I assumed she got bored or annoyed, so it left the head of a boar on top of my Jeep's hood and stopped coming. A couple of weeks later, I closed up the eastern house and checked the rest of the properties before spending my final night at the caretaker's house. I was in bed sleeping when I woke up paralyzed. I felt someone crawl into bed with me. I looked to my left and it was a girl. Not pretty nor ugly, just extremely plain. Except her eyes, they were a bright hazel, almost golden, amazingly beautiful. She snuggled up to me and played with my hair before she closed my eyes with her fingers. An overwhelming urge to sleep hit me and I was out. I woke up to my pants unbuttoned and scratches all over me. No blood, but they hurt like hell. What the hell? As I was packing up and leaving, the caretaker said he was planning to ask his brother to move onto the property too. I told him I will let my parents know, and they will talk next weekend. I swing by my granny's place to say my goodbyes. Before I get out of my car, my aunts and my grandma rush out and ask me what's wrong. I say I'm fine, but they open up my shirt and freak out because of the scratches. She wants him for herself. They tell me I better get cleansed or my soul will be corrupted. I reaffirm and say I'm totally fine. I will have my mom take care of it when I get back. They are adamant that they do it because by then the damage will be too severe. I humor them just to ease their worry. I sit in the chair as my aunties and grandma cleanse the hacks. They rub egg all over me as they pray. They rub aloe vera on my scratches and then sprinkle salt. They give me an amulet of a moon. It takes about 2 hours, but honestly, I felt better, which is weird because I felt fine before. I said my goodbyes and start heading out of the town. It's around 7ish p.m. when I hit the other side of the northern forest. As I look into the forest, I spot a white owl just staring at me as I drive by. I swear I heard the same laughing as it faded in my rear view. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I was about 11 or 12 years old when this happened. It was autumn in the UK. I am hanging out with my bestie, who we will call Amy, and a couple of other dudes our age, who we will call Keith and Joe after school. I never really liked Amy, but she was the only girl my age who lived within walking distance of my house, so we were sorta forced together. We are all hanging out because she is dating Joe, and they are hoping I will hook up with Keith. Neither me nor Keith are interested in each other. Yeah, super awkward teen shit. We just go along with it, cause Amy kinda said so. I can't go nowhere, cause we have no money. We end up walking around the council estate the boys live around. Just keep walking, till we end up at this Pond National Trust area. It had been raining that morning, so the trails and stuff were super muddy. In-Sioux lads dicking around. Teenage testosterone flying. Girls walk behind, watching antics. Amy is happily chatting away about how she is or isn't gonna kiss Joe. You should kiss Keith, then we should double date. Keith is currently insisting he could piss on a duck from this distance. Yeah, no, I'm good. Get into a minor argument over whether or not I'm a prude. The boys wander off ahead. I assume to see if they can piss on duck heads or whatever. Amy suddenly screams and jumps. What the hell? I ask what's wrong. Apparently, One of the boys had thrown a handful of mud at her back. Sure enough, there is mud all over her back. But the boys are ahead of us. We look around. Turns out that we're now alone and it's dark. The boys forgot about us. We joked that the duck threw the mud because the boys had pissed on them and now they were angry. We decided we better start walking and catch up with the boys. Walking is actually a bit tricky because of all of the thick mud. Screw it, we will ditch them and just walk back. She insists on catching them up. Ensue argument. Fine, go home then you pussy, prude, etc, etc. I am cold, muddy, and done with her shit. I walk off back the way we came, hoping to find the main road so I can walk to the bus stop. Somewhere along the way, I got really lost. I just keep walking. The area is pretty small, so I can't be that lost. I come across another pond bit. On the other side, I see a dark figure crouched by water. It's dark, so it's hard to see. Oh great, a creepy homeless dude. I am going to get mugged and assaulted. Suddenly, splat, mud hits me in the back. I spin around, seriously pissed at my friend. There is nobody there. I turn back around to the homeless dude. He is not there anymore either. I absolutely peg it back along the way I came. I run for minutes, but it seems like hours. I am lost and afraid. I finally bump into Amy. She is pissed at me. I assume it's because I ditched her, and I start apologizing for it. I'm not mad about that. I'm mad you kept following me and throwing mud at me. Bitch, what? Apparently, she'd been looking for the boys but had got lost and turned around because someone had been throwing mud and stones at her. I tell her what happened to me. It clicks. It's the boys. Clearly they were messing with us. United in hatred of boys, we find the trail and walk. Eventually make it back to the main pond. We are muddy and angry. We get to the main road. She will have to walk back to Joe's house because she left her school bag there. We walk back. It's proper dark outside now. We have no idea what the time is. We knock on the door to his house. His dad answers. What the hell, it's 11 p.m. Go away. She explains she left her bag there. Well, why didn't you come home with Joe and get it? Turns out, Joe had gone home at 6 p.m. Joe's dad goes upstairs, leaving us at the door, and grabs Amy's bag, gives it to us, and tells us not to call again. The buses are not running. I have to get my mom to pick us up. I'm in deep shit. She lies to her dad and gets away with it. I have not been there in almost 10 years now. I grew up in Moodus, Connecticut, and here is my spoopy childhood experience. For some backstory, the town of Moodus was literally founded on the land that the Pequot, Mohegan, and Narragansett tribes considered to be cursed and actively inhabited by an evil deity. And the town's name comes from Moodus, which means place of evil noises. I really don't know what we expected. Anyway, so when I was about 8 years old, my family acquired a half-built house way the hell up in the forest and mountains of Moodus. The construction company that had started the house had gone bankrupt in the middle of construction, and the house had sat unfinished for several years. When we began work on the house, we noticed there was a really unsettling amount of dead wildlife in it. The unfinished floors were covered in layers of plastic sheets and shipping paper from the old construction crew, and between the layers of debris, we would find squirrels, birds, raccoons, foxes, and such in various stages of decay. My father had fixed up similar abandoned properties in the past, but he had never seen such a ridiculous volume of dead squatter animals. So construction went more or less as planned. Though both my family and a good number of the workers would commonly see something in the corner of our eyes when outside alone. It was always a dark object, roughly the size of a large dog, that jolted along the perimeter of the forest. Towards the end of construction, we drilled out a new well for the house, because the first well that was drilled was left uncovered, unmarked, unfinished, and one of the surveyors fell into it and was pretty seriously injured. When we re-drilled the well, one of the people who drilled it was decapitated on his next job in a freak accident involving the power lift on the back of a truck. I don't really have any more details on it than that. We had a serious iron problem with the water and went through like 4 different water filters that could not fix the problem. Every tech and filter representative was confused as to why the filters were not working. The water would run a rusty orange-red and stain their bathtubs and toilets orange. During our last 6 months with the house, we finally found a filter that fixed the iron problem, and our water well cap was struck by lightning a week later, and it fried the new filtration system. My father was a depressed alcoholic that was in an accident years before, which ruptured discs in his spine, and it severely restricted his ability to move. From his alcoholism, he died on the property from a hemorrhaged ulcer. He drowned in his own blood, and from the medics trying to resuscitate him, he left a pool of blood on the carpet of our living room that we could not wash out. Even after all of this stuff, the last straw was this. I had this really crazy Christian friend, and I don't mean Christian in the normal way. It was like cult tier, control freak, really not sound of mind and had delusions. Anyway, so her mom, who was also like this and I guess instilled this stuff in her, refused to let her on the property. They only came over to offer their sympathies after my dad died, and her mother said a little prayer, but she said the prayer in tongues. The front door was attached to our living room, and to the immediate right was the staircase to go upstairs. 3 lights were on in this little area. When Crazy Mom said her little prayer, all 3 of the lights blew out. I could settle for everything just being life and bad luck, but the last bit still shakes me to my core when I think about it. We moved very shortly after that, and as far as I know, the house has gone through at least 3 other owners since then. We've all been curse-free since then though, so there's that. Fun bonus. From the 2nd floor, we could see a distant radio tower far off into the forest. It was really, really far off. When my father had just bought the property, he was excited because the lot was acres and acres of forest, and he was an avid hunter. He and one of his friends went out surveying/hunting for a week. They trekked straight across and actually found the radio tower. The tower was located in a large vacant field full of golden wheat with a collapsed barn. My father said there were what appeared to be horse remains in the barn, but I don't even know, man. The radio tower was rusted out. The tiny attached station was abandoned and falling apart, and they did not know how the tower was seemingly still operating. There were no visible roads leading to this overgrown field, and they were surrounded by dense forest on all sides.